I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. My name's David, and I was married to Sarah for about 7 years before I started noticing things that didn't sit right. At first, it was small stuff. She'd be late for dinner, or she'd dodge my questions about where she'd been. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed or busy with work. But then, little things started piling up. It was a busy election season, and I was deep into my campaign for city council. I was working long hours, late nights at fundraisers, meetings, all that political stuff. Sarah was always supportive, or so I thought. Our marriage wasn't perfect. She had her bitchy moments and she could be pretty manipulative, but I never thought she'd cheat. Not on me. Not with some donor I'd never even met. Then I started noticing my campaign manager, Lisa, acting weird. She'd send me messages, sometimes late at night, that seemed more personal than professional. I'd catch her staring at her phone during meetings, and she'd get flustered if I asked about her weekend plans. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I started. Feeling paranoid. I'd hear Sarah on the phone sometimes, whispering to someone, and she'd hang up fast if I came near. One night I decided to check our bank account, just to see if everything was in order. Instead of just the usual campaign expenses, I found some strange hotel charges. Large, recurring charges at a hotel downtown. I looked up the receipts and my stomach dropped. The dates lined up with when she was supposed to be at those fundraising events. It was her handwriting, but the receipts showed she'd been staying at some luxury hotel alone with some guy. I didn't recognize his name, but the hotel confirmed she checked in alone. I felt sick. My mind spun. Why would she lie? Who was this guy? I knew she was bitchy, manipulative, and she loved to lie about where she was, but this was something else entirely. She had been cheating on me. During my campaign, during the nights I spent working late, she was with some other man. It felt like a punch in the gut, like I'd been punched so hard I couldn't breathe. I wanted to confront her right then, but I held back. I needed to see her face when I did. I decided to gather more evidence first. I started following her phone records, checking her emails, looking for anything that could confirm my suspicions. And then I found out she'd been meeting him at a place she told me she hated, some trendy bar downtown. She'd always complained about the noise and the pretentious crowd, but she'd been there, drinking with him, laughing. It was like my whole world was crumbling inside me. I'd been blind, trusting her, making excuses for her mood swings and lies. I thought she was just bitchy, maybe stressed out, but now I saw her for what she really was. A liar, a cheat, and someone capable of betraying everything we had. I was furious. Not just sad, but furious. How could she do this to me, to us? After all these years, she throws everything away for some hotel affair. I was torn between wanting to scream at her and just breaking down. But I knew I had to keep my head. I needed to plan my next move carefully. I couldn't just burst in and accuse her without proof, without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. But the fire inside me was burning hot, and I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. That's when I started to prepare myself for the confrontation that was coming, because I knew, deep down, that once I showed her I knew everything, nothing would be the same anymore. I spent the next few days obsessively going over everything I'd uncovered. My mind kept circling around her lies, her sneaking around, the hotel receipts, the late-night calls. I was angry, hurt, and honestly a little lost. I'd never been the kind of guy to blow up easily, but this, her cheating, felt like a blow that knocked the wind out of me. The worst part, I knew she'd lie her way out of it if I confronted her. That bitchy smirk of hers would turn into a fake innocence, like I was crazy for even suspecting her. I decided I had enough proof. I had to face her. I waited until she was supposed to be at a work dinner, but I knew she was probably with him. I planned to catch her, to finally confront her head-on. I wanted her to see that I knew, that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. That night I hid in the living room pretending to watch TV. I kept my phone in my hand, recording just in case. At around 9 p.m. I saw her come through the door looking smug, like she just had the best night ever. She slipped off her shoes, tried to act normal, but I was already standing there blocking her way. "Where were you, Sarah?" I said, keeping my voice steady but firm. Her eyes widened just a little. She blinked, then shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Oh, come on, David, you're overthinking again. I was just at that new boutique opening with Lisa. You know how she loves to drag me to those things. Honestly, I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of it. I didn't buy it, not for a second. Really. Because I looked at the hotel receipts, Sarah. The ones you thought I wouldn't find. You stayed there alone with some guy. And I know you were with him at that bar downtown, laughing and drinking. Don't try to lie your way out of this. Her face froze for a moment, and then I sneer curled her lips. Oh, so now you're spying on me. That's pathetic, David. You're so paranoid. Maybe if you paid more attention to your damn campaign and less to my personal life, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Her words hit me like a slap. I felt my fists clench, but I kept my voice controlled. I'm not paranoid, Sarah. I've seen enough to know what's going on. You've been lying for months, haven't you? Cheating on me, sneaking around, lying about where you're going. Who is he? He rolled her eyes, her bitchy smirk back in place. You're losing it. Honestly, I don't know what you want me to say. I was at a business dinner, that's all. You're imagining things. This is just your insecurities talking. I'm sick of your accusations. That's when I snapped. I told her I had the receipts, the hotel confirmation, the messages, that I knew she was cheating. Her face twisted into something ugly, like she was furious I'd caught her. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, crazy, insecure. Her voice got shrill, and she accused me of spying, of ruining everything, of being jealous as hell because she didn't love me anymore. I felt a strange mix of relief and rage, relief that I finally had proof. Rage because I was furious she'd lie so effortlessly that she thought she could get away with it. I told her she could deny it all she wanted, but I wasn't going to stay married to a cheat. I said I'd had enough, I was done with her lies, and I was going to do what I had to do. She stormed out of the room, yelling insults, slamming the front door behind her. I stood there, trembling, trying to breathe. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my support, and this is how she repaid me. It was like she had no remorse, no guilt, just cold, bitchy indifference. As I watched her walk out that door, I realized my entire world had shifted. Everything I had believed about her, about us, was a lie. And now I had to decide what to do next. Do I fight for this marriage? Do I try to forgive and forget? Or do I cut her loose and move on? That night, lying in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, I knew one thing for sure. My life was never going to be the same again. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't sleep much, kept replaying that confrontation over and over in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sneer, heard her dismissive tone, and remembered the hotel receipts. I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach all over again. Honestly, I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. It's one thing to suspect, but to have it confirmed with proof, that's a whole different level of pain. I tried to keep busy, but everything reminded me of her. Her perfume lingering in the air, her favorite mug on the kitchen counter, her clothes still in the closet. It was like the house was haunted by her ghost. I kept asking myself how I missed all of this. How the hell did I not see her for what she was? She'd been so bitchy, so manipulative, but I thought it was just her personality. Now I saw it was so much more. She'd been hiding this other life, this lie. The worst part was that she refused to own up to it. Every time I brought up the receipts, she'd deny everything, call me crazy or possessive. She'd throw out excuses, those business dinners, the girls' nights, even blame me for being distant or not paying enough attention. She insisted she'd never cheated, that I was just insecure. Honestly, I hated her for that. I hated how she'd twist everything to make herself look like the victim. That bitchy smirk she'd wear when she lied made my skin crawl now, but I wasn't stupid. I knew the truth. The hotel receipts, the messages from that guy, the way she'd act when she thought I wasn't paying attention, that was enough. I decided I had to plan my next step carefully. I couldn't just pack my bags and walk out without a plan, not yet. I needed to gather more evidence, get my ducks in a row. I couldn't let her spin her lies and manipulate me anymore. So I started digging deeper. I checked her emails, her social media messages, her credit card statements. I found more proof, small things that confirmed she'd been lying for months. Secret dinners, late-night meetings, receipts for lingerie she claimed she never bought. It was like peeling back layers of her deception. I felt sick every time I found something new, but I told myself I had to keep going. I needed irrefutable proof before I confronted her again. One night I followed her on her phone. She was heading toward that downtown bar again, laughing with him, sharing drinks. I parked nearby and watched. I saw her lean in, whisper something, then they both burst into laughter. She looked so happy, so carefree, and I realized I'd been replaced, or at least that's how it felt. I thought about all the nights I spent working late, worrying about her. Meanwhile, she'd been cheating on me, with some man she barely even knew. That realization hit hard. I was so angry, so devastated. It wasn't just about her cheating, it was about my trust, my marriage, my entire life falling apart. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall, and I didn't know if I could come back from this. The next day, I sat down with my thoughts. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, playing her game. I had to decide if I was going to fight for the marriage or cut my losses. I wasn't going to lie, part of me still loved her, still wanted to believe she'd come clean, admit everything and try to fix it. But deep down, I knew better. She wasn't going to do that, not after all this. I also realized I wasn't just angry, I was hurt. The kind of hurt that gnaws at your soul. When you trust someone for so long and then find out they've been lying about everything, it feels like your world is crumbling. I didn't want to be with someone who thought so little of me, who could betray me so easily. That night I made a decision. I was done waiting. I was done being the fool. I planned to confront her again, but this time completely prepared. I was going to lay everything out, show her I knew that I wasn't going to be played anymore. That's when I realized the only way forward was to be honest with myself. If she wanted to keep this affair going, I'd have to accept that I deserved better. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way to pick up the pieces of my life and move on. The day I decided to confront her again, I felt a strange mix of nerves and relief. Somehow, knowing I had the proof, knowing I was finally going to face her head-on, made me feel like I was taking back some control. I had spent so many sleepless nights obsessing over her lies, her sneaky meetings, her hotel stays. Now, I was ready to hear whatever bullshit she was going to throw at me, but I'd be prepared this time. I waited until she was supposed to leave for some work event, but I knew she'd be meeting him again tonight. I set up a recording on my phone just in case I needed it. I didn't want her to gaslight me again or deny everything outright. I wanted her to see I was serious, that I had evidence, that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I got everything ready and sat in the living room trying to keep my nerves in check. When she finally walked in, smiling, confident, I didn't hold back. I stood up and blocked her path. Her eyes flicked to the phone and I could see her panic just for a moment. Where were you, Sarah? I asked sharply, voice steady but angry. She tried to brush past me, but I held her wrist gently. Don't think I haven't seen the hotel receipts. Don't think I didn't follow the trail. I know what you've been doing. I know about him, the bar, the hotel, everything. Her face twisted like she was caught in a lie that was unraveling. David, you're crazy, she spat. You're just paranoid. I've been working late, that's all. You're overthinking again. You're insecure. I can't believe you're acting like this. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recording I'd made earlier. Her voice, caught on tape, denying anything was going on, trying to cover her tracks. Her eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She tried to pretend she was innocent, that I was mistaken, that I was losing my mind. Look at this, I said, showing her the receipts on my phone. Look at these charges, her hotel check-in, the messages she sent him. I don't care what you say. You're the one who betrayed me, Sarah. For months, you've been lying to my face. How could you do this? She started to cry, fake tears, I thought, but her voice was still full of that bitchy, dismissive tone. You don't understand, David. It's just sex. It's nothing. It's not a big deal. You're just blowing this out of proportion. That stung, because I knew it was a lie. I knew it wasn't just about sex. It was about her betrayal, her manipulation, her sneaky game, and I was furious. How could she be so cold, so callous? I told her I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I was done. Her response was to scream at me, calling me jealous, insecure, useless. She accused me of trying to control her, of being paranoid. She kept insisting she loved me, but her actions told a different story. I looked at her, realizing how much I'd been blinded, how I'd let her walk all over me because I loved her. In that moment, I saw her true face, the bitchy, manipulative woman who thought she could have her cake and eat it too. I felt an overwhelming wave of sadness, but also a flicker of clarity. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew I couldn't stay in this lie any longer. I told her she had two choices: own up and fix this, or leave and let me go. I warned her that I wasn't going to be the fool anymore, that I deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty. Her reaction? She just sneered, then turned around and walked out the door, her high heels clicking on the floor. I stood there for a long moment, staring after her, feeling like I'd just been punched in the gut again. But underneath all the pain, there was a strange sense of relief. I finally knew the truth. No more pretending, no more lies. The real heartbreak was realizing I'd been so blind for so long. But now, at least, I could start to pick up the pieces and decide what comes next. After she left, I just stood there, feeling numb. My mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. I replayed everything: the lies, the receipts, the confrontations, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to chase after her, scream at her, demand answers. But another part knew that there was no point. She had already shown her true colors, the bitchy, manipulative side that she'd always tried to hide. I knew I had to decide what I was going to do next. Staying in this mess was only going to hurt more. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know. I'd been played for a fool, and honestly, I was sick of it. So I took a deep breath, sat down on the couch, and started thinking about my options. First, I considered confronting her again, making her own up to everything face to face. But deep down, I knew she'd never admit to anything without more proof, and even then she'd just spin it to make herself look like the victim. No, I had enough of her lies. It was time to get some distance, time to think about myself for once. My mind kept circling back to the idea of divorce. I wasn't sure I was ready for that right away, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Not with her sneaking around, lying, and pretending everything was fine. I looked around the house and everything just felt wrong. Our photos, our shared memories, they seemed like a lifetime ago. I realized I'd wasted so much time trying to fix what was broken, but now I saw that she'd broken it long before I ever caught her. I had been holding on to a dream that was never real. She was a bitchy, manipulative woman who cared only about herself, and I had been too blind to see it. So I decided I'd give her space, let her stew for a bit. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but I knew I had to protect myself. I called a lawyer that afternoon just to understand my options. I needed to know what I was entitled to, how I could protect my assets, and what steps I should take if she refused to admit the truth. That was the smartest thing I could do: get legal advice before I did anything big. While I waited for my lawyer to call back, I started packing some of my essentials. Not because I wanted to leave immediately, but because I needed to feel like I was taking control again. I couldn't let her walk all over me anymore. I also reached out to a few friends, people I trusted, to vent and get some perspective. Honestly, I don't know how I would have made it through that day without talking to someone. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. Later that night, lying in bed alone, I kept thinking about everything I'd been through: the lies, the betrayals, the nights I should have seen the signs but ignored them. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, trying to believe she was just bitchy sometimes, or that her mood swings were because of stress. But now I saw her clearly. She was selfish, manipulative, and capable of whatever it took to get what she wanted. That hurt more than anything. I'd wasted years trusting someone who didn't deserve it, but I also knew one thing: this was not the end. I'd survive this. I'd rebuild somehow. Maybe I'd be better off without her. Maybe I'd find someone who actually cared. Either way, I'd never let her pull this shit on me again. I'd learned my lesson the hard way. No more lies, no more betrayal. From now on, I was taking control of my life, and I was never going to let anyone hurt me like this again. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from Sarah, letting her stew in her own lies and manipulations. I stayed in contact with my lawyer, getting everything in order. It was clear she wasn't going to admit the truth voluntarily. Her bitchy attitude only hardened, and her lies got more desperate. I knew I had to prepare myself for what was coming next, whether it was a divorce or some kind of reconciliation that I no longer trusted. Honestly, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Part of me wanted to tear everything down and walk away, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I'd spent so much time loving her, trying to fix her, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. I'd been blind, and I'd let her do it for too long. One night, I sat down and wrote a long letter to myself. Not a letter to her, but just something to remind me of what I'd learned through all this. I told myself I deserved better, more honesty, more respect, that I needed to stop blaming myself for her betrayals. I had to accept that some people are just not worth the pain they cause, no matter how much love you have for them. That moment was a turning point. I realized I'd been holding onto a fantasy, trying to believe she'd change or that she still loved me, but her actions proved otherwise. She'd chosen her lies over our marriage, her ego over everything we built. I couldn't change her. I could only change myself, how I reacted, how I moved forward. So I made the decision to divorce. I told her so in a calm but firm way. I explained I couldn't be with someone who lied, cheated, and manipulated me for months, that I deserved honesty, and if she wanted to rebuild anything, she'd have to genuinely own up to her actions and change. But I knew deep down that was unlikely. She'd already shown me who she was. The process was messy, as expected. She fought every step of the way, trying to spin it into some kind of tragedy where she was the victim. But I refused to be pulled into her games. I had my own life to rebuild. I moved out, found a new place, and slowly started focusing on myself. I started therapy because I needed to heal the emotional wounds she'd inflicted. Looking back now, I realized the worst part wasn't just her cheating, it was the betrayal of trust, the realization that someone you loved could be so selfish and manipulative. But I also learned something valuable. I can survive this. I can pick myself up, even when everything feels shattered. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to walk away when you know deep down that someone doesn't respect you enough to be honest. Love is supposed to lift you up, not tear you apart. I lost a lot, but I gained clarity, and that's worth more than any relationship built on lies. I'll never forget what I went through, but I am finally ready to move forward. Because at the end of the day, the only person you truly have to rely on when everything falls apart is yourself.